All right, hit a record. The session is being recorded. We will ask you to fill out a survey in the end so that we know you're here so you can get this recording. But with that, we will get started. I'll let Vadim take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. So again, I'm just making sure again that you can hear me okay. But
yes, sir.
Awesome. Great. So just to let you know again how these sessions will go. Every week we have a different instructor, a different expert from the field of tech. We've already had a sales expert last week from Google. And we also had a talent acquisition manager from Slack. And today we have Surbhi Gupta, who's a senior product manager at MATRIXX Software and has a really, really deep and extensive background in product. She actually comes from an engineering background and transitioned into product. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation about exactly how she did that as well. We want to make actually also another announcement for everybody. So if you've been to these sessions, you kind of have a good idea of how they go, but we've also done phone calls with a number of you as well. And we've had a lot of requests for a more formal program beyond just these free weekly sessions that, of course, you all have access to and will continue to have access to in perpetuity. We always want to make these available to everybody that makes the time to attend. But of course, with 45, 50, 60, up to 100 people that are joining these sessions, there's only so much we can address individually. So we are announcing, because of all the requests that we've heard from you, selective tuition-based program to give you access to the network of instructors that we have, similar to the instructors that you have been seeing in the sessions in the weeks past. And these instructors, again, are going to be in the 4 core areas of tech where most people are looking to gain opportunities, which is product, marketing, operations, sales as well. The idea of this program, I'll give you a few more details, but you can, of course, find out more by going to school16.co/program, and I'll drop the link into the description as well. But the idea of this program is to provide individualized help and to also give individualized access to our network and help people figure out their career plans and help people figure out where they want to land in tech. So it's a 2-month program that'll be launching this summer. It's remote and it's part-time to make sure that it's accessible for anybody that's still is fortunate enough to have a full-time job, but is looking to make a change in their career. You will learn principles in each of the 4 core areas that we've identified. Again, product, marketing, operations, and sales to help you understand what the right career path is for you. We will also give you hands-on experiential opportunity, this experiential learning. So you'll get to learn and put what you learn into immediate practice to help develop your resume. And we also will help you develop your individualized career plan. If you complete the program, you will get a certificate. Again, this is going to be a highly selective program and space will be limited, so early applicants will be given priority. And if you've enjoyed the sessions that you've been to the last several weeks, we will be teaching some of those sessions directly ourselves between Sergey and myself. We're professors for a reason and we love to teach, so we're still going to do part of it. But of course, we will have instructors and experts primarily leading the sessions where you can learn directly from people in the roles and disciplines that you're interested in. All right. If you have any questions, of course, you can always email us, info@school16.co, or my name, Vadim @school16.co, or Sergey @school16.co. Or you can head to school16.co/program. I'll drop the link right now after I'm done talking to help you out. All right. Awesome. So we want to get started. It's already 6:11. I think we've got a bunch of people already in the Zoom. Sergey, did I miss anything? Can we just get started now with Surbhi? Looks like Sergey's on mute, so I'm not going to force him.
Yeah, let's get started. Let's get started. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So Surbhi Gupta, thank you so much for patiently waiting during our introduction, and we really appreciate you joining the call today. How are you today?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing good. Thank you. Happy to share my thoughts if it can help anyone.
That's fantastic. No, I'm sure it's going to be incredibly helpful. I've had the opportunity, obviously, to get to know you and have an intimate understanding of your wealth of knowledge. So I'm looking forward to having you share it with our class. So let's start where we usually start with these sessions. If you could just give us a brief background of your experience and how your career has progressed to date.
Sure. So I'm an engineer turned PM, as you were already sharing. So I started my career as a software engineer in India. I have a computer science background. I did wrote software for a couple of years. Then I moved into consulting. I joined Oracle. So was in Oracle consulting. Consulting, typically my role was helping pre-sales team, requiring like they would require more knowledge in the product. So I was consulting for a product in Oracle. So developed expertise on that. It involved a lot of customer interaction. So I was fortunate enough to travel to a lot of customer sites around the world. I joined NYU. I left Oracle for a year. I was doing my master's in NYU, got pulled back by Oracle in US again, worked for around 5 years with Oracle US. I was based out of New York, East Coast. Um, with Oracle Consulting, I was doing most part of the product management, which is like dealing the front part of the customer interaction, like what do they really need, how your product meets those requirements, and what requirements are not met. And I used to work with product management team in Oracle as well as the customer side. So actually I was working with Intuit here when I used to travel, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to move to product management full time. So the way I had an expertise in a particular field in subscription management, primarily for companies like Intuit, SiriusXM, Rackspace. So any subscription management product where I could like use my Oracle product. So I did that transition directly in the same field in the product. That's what I advise generally people, and I'll share later during our talk. So that's how I ended up joining product site. I started with a startup here in the Valley. It's now I'm working for my second startup here. So far I love it. What I do every day is different. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any further questions on any of the topics that I've touched.
Perfect. And again, if folks are joining for the first time, the way that these sessions go is Sergey and myself will lead the discussion to make sure we hit on all the most important points. However, part of the value of this is we want to address the questions that you have. So throughout the whole conversation, feel free to drop your questions directly into the chat so that we can make sure to address the most relevant ones. So Surbhi, I'm curious, you mentioned, and obviously I can see why you enjoy the role. Product is inherently dynamic. It's one of the reasons why it's a coveted role. Not only does it pay well, but it also is very dynamic and interesting. You got your start, or at least at the very least, you're early on in your career, you were in these massive organizations, Intuit and Oracle. Do you feel like it was helpful to be at a big company in terms of getting more formal experience and training, both as an engineer and a product person? Was there any specific training that you were able to take advantage of? And do you feel like it was a benefit to you to be at a big company versus a small one early on?
That's an interesting question. I took a lot of trainings in Amdocs, which is like a leader in the work I used to do specifically for mobile careers. And in Oracle, there are a lot of trainings. So I did attend it, but I'm not sure if working with a bigger company or a smaller company really matters. It's more about you, what you are learning, what you are taking away in your day-to-day work. I think I learned a lot more in the startup world because everybody's right there. You work with many cross-functional teams. So in larger companies, the learning for me was more in the consulting role, where I was not like, okay, I'm hired once and I'm just, working with the same team. I had this challenge that almost every year or maybe couple of months, if my project will change, because I was in consulting, I had to rebuild all that rapport with the new set of people, especially at the client side, and even your own team keeps on changing. So that actually helped me, working with many different people from different backgrounds, different skill set, irrespective of whether you're working for a larger or smaller company. I don't think it mattered. It didn't matter to me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. One of the things that's really valued by employers, and something that they could try to even test for during the interview process, is your ability to get embedded into teams and start and become productive as quickly as possible. Of course, there's always a ramp up period. Of course, people need to get trained. But if you do have the ability and you have the experience of working with a lot of different teams and getting ramped up quickly, you are seen as an asset. So I'm curious, I mean, you started off as an engineer. When did you start to think that you might want to do something else? And when did product management specifically come into your brain, or even your awareness?
Yeah, I'm happy to share this. It may sound like a little funny, but what I think back in 2011-12, I was working in South Korea with Oracle. And it was a very close team from Oracle because I was from Nam region and we just got this project in Korea with Korea Telecom. So I went from here and there were 2-3 other people. So my boss, because we were sharing one space from Oracle, we used to sit right next to each other. He was really a big shot in Oracle. And he who told me once we used to go for dinner and all, just because outside work, there are only few people who know each other and who know English. So he just happened to manage it. Hey, you should actually go for product management. I think you would really like that field. And I was like, hey, I don't even know what is product management at that time, because I was based out of East Coast. Most of my friends were in consulting, management consulting, strategic, technical, all that sort, finance. These were the areas, and project management was something that I used to hear more. So back in like 2004, 2005, when I used to work in India, I didn't know about product management as such. Only when I came to like other projects here, I realized that, okay, this is what I really want to do. But so I heard about it first time from my boss, because I was just asking him more about career growth. So I think it was very beneficial to talk with the people. They sometimes guide you like, hey, what do you want to do next? So that was first time I heard about it. And then I started, interacting more whenever there was an opportunity. That, okay, product development was more was a term that people used to use more at that time. But then when I went to other HR companies, I started interacting with product teams, and then I realized, okay, maybe this is something I really want to do. So I explored more on my own. I used to attend a lot of such sessions like today when I was in Silicon Valley as well. Used to go on my own when I was like interested in this, that is it something I want to do or not. So I think the biggest advice I would give people, that you should be like receptive on what are the things that are happening, what other people are doing, which kind of teams are you interacting with, and then you figure out if you like that role, then reach out to people, look for such material. Like there are so many sessions, even online there is so much material, so you get acquainted whether it is something you want to explore further.
No, that's great. And you're absolutely right. And that's something that's actually been a recurring theme throughout every class that we've had, is the most successful people are not afraid of reaching out and asking for advice. I'm curious, since this is a role that you didn't have as much exposure to when you first joined it, what did you find from from what the role actually was, the day-to-day, what the job was? What was the difference between what you expected it would be and what the reality was of the day-to-day?
So product management, like everyone else, if you hear it, sounds super cool, right? That you need to have good ideas. That's what everybody thinks. That like if you tell your mom what you're doing, I generally take an example that, hey, which app do you like? Maybe WhatsApp. Product management or product managers are the people who decide like what should we build next. So people generally think if I can come up with good ideas and I can communicate well, then that's it. I think it's a very challenging role. It's not about your ideas. It's more about aligning with everyone else, because it's more about actually what other people want rather than what you are looking for. So that's super challenging. And also on the communication side, I'll share my story. When I was in NYU, I did radio jockeying for a South Asian channel. I was always very interested in public speaking and things like that. But so I used to think that, hey, I'm really good at it. It would be so easy for me. But I realized in product, like how difficult even normal sounding like communication becomes, because you have to be like super crisp when you're dealing with different stakeholders. So if you're explaining same feature, you have to portray, or I would say give different details on the audience. So now I think from that perspective that, okay, who are my audience? What would they understand? And then you have to cater your answer to that. Like say, simple example, if you are talking to engineering, you have to keep their, like, tell them a lot of details, but at the same time, you're working with design, UX design, you have to, because they are very creative, you have to keep them focused. And if you're talking to your stakeholders, you have to justify the business value. And it requires a lot of communication almost every day with all these different teams. Like I talk with legal team, I had no idea that how this all works. So basically it's very, very cross-functional. That's the beauty, but that's challenging as well.
Very interesting. I think what you mentioned there, which is the ability to communicate with the different stakeholders and different types of people in the company, is actually probably, I would say, the most important contributor to your success as a product manager, because you are working with designers, you're working with engineers, you're working with the executive suite, you're working with salespeople, and you have to be trusted to communicate with customers. And all those different people look at the world through a different lens. And in order to, one of the things that a product manager does is they have to essentially corral all these different groups towards a shared vision and a shared goal. It's why product managers are often called product owners, CEO of a product for a reason. So actually, if you can maybe tell me a little bit about that. When is the first time when you became a product manager that you felt like there's a lot of responsibility weighing on you and you actually have a lot of decision-making capacity? Can you give a specific story about that?
Sure. So my transition for me was even more interesting because I moved from a larger company to a smaller startup where anyways you interact with many people, and there was a shift in role. So all of a sudden you have access to all these different people. Like in consulting or engineering, you still deal with stakeholders, but not like the a number of stakeholders that you have to deal with, or the cross-functional teams are still very less as compared to the ones you deal in product management. So now like you can just walk to marketing and say, on the website, we need to have this. So you can critique things, you contribute in blogs. I'm just starting so you have a lot more say, like how you can help the product grow, because your only goal here is to have the product, like make your product successful. So you work with different stakeholders. So I think going back to your question, which is like how it went for me, with the great power, it comes with a lot of great responsibility. So I actually used to work very hard. I still remember it was ever since I moved into product, I have always been learning. So I think the biggest thing that I have done is that always learn from other teams and keep executing, and don't just, maybe because being in Silicon Valley also, I've worked with companies which are open to taking risks, like especially in the startups. So try to do things, experiment with the product, listen to what your customer is saying. So I have worked in like B2B2C environment where your customers are big businesses, but then they have their other customers as well. So I got access to all these different customers. You can actually set up meetings on your own. In consulting, it wasn't very similar. You are dedicated to a customer and it takes a lot of time actually to go to that level. But in product management, you can just access to all that information. You can have data scientists to work for you if you want some more data for something. You can work with design to come up with some interesting designs. So I think you have all these different teams, but nobody is directly like reporting to you. So you need to justify that, hey, why I want this information, why I want a designer to explore on a new feature that I'm working on, and I want her to think a little differently. So that's where, though you have access to all different things, you have to bring in that value that you are providing to the product and convince these different people to participate with you. I think that's another challenge. And that comes not only with communication, but also how you justify the value for achieving your goals. So you have basically all the excess, but you need to use the resources in the best way so you can share the outcomes, because you don't get a lot of time. The world is moving really fast, and especially the product management job is super visible. Like you interact with staff, and if something goes wrong, it's very, very visible. So you need to be very vigilant on how you are accumulating everybody's time.
That's very interesting. How do you manage that, Surbhi, when the fact that you're trying to influence a lot of people to make a decision based on your input, which is hopefully based on the customer's input, but they don't report to you? So how do you influence them?
So it's not my input. I would say it's more like the homework that product managers do. That's the only role it's usually like a lot of meetings, but all these meetings have the agenda where actually you are just being the voice of the customer. And also you prioritize that this is what we want to do. So you bring in a lot of data to justify things that you want to actually discuss, because nobody is gonna build what I want, but I have to just represent and show that, like basically the data that, hey, this is what makes sense for us out of all these different things. Maybe we have 10 different items to do, but we have limited resources and we have limited time. So maybe we cannot have unlimited engineering. So where should we focus? So that's where product role comes in. We basically give the focus to the organization based on the organization's goal. For example, whenever something comes, I have to ask with my e-staff and my VP of product and everybody that, hey, what is the focus? Why are we building this feature in our roadmap? There are 100 things that we can do, but why right now I'm focusing on building this particular thing? So for example, if it's a new product, what would you really want to do? You want customers to try, maybe you want many users to adopt it. So all your roadmap is based on that, and then you go to these different people and you justify that out of all these different things, this is what is most important to do right now. And that's how you convince people to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned. It is a highly visible role, but that also means it's a highly visible role. So when mistakes happen, or when there's issues, the buck kind of stops at you, kind of like the CEO. That's why they call it a product owner. The CEO's usually the owner of the company, or at the very least, the buck stops at them. Same with the product manager. And this is also why the product management role typically doesn't exist until a startup is a little bit more mature, growth stage, 20, 25, 30 people. In the beginning, the product manager is usually the CEO or the COO, or one of the first early employees that intimately understands the customer or the product and the solution that has been developed. But as a startup grows, they need to assign that role to somebody else that can actually own it. And what you said there is exactly right. In order to compel other people to actually act on your decisions, you need to have the support of others, but also to have the goal in mind, the ultimate goal in mind. Usually that means servicing the customer or the bottom line or whatever it is. So you mentioned a few things, Surbhi. You talked about how sometimes it's making sure a feature gets more usage, or that you're optimizing the number of users that interact with a particular application. And what I want to actually kind of transition to a little bit is to highlight for folks the differences between different product management roles. Because product management, there's a reason why you probably didn't know what it was until you started talking to your boss about it. I also didn't know what it was, even though I was in software for years before I knew what product management was. It took me getting a lot of experience. And even once I knew what it was, even once I had the role, I found that my friends that were product managers somewhere else, there were some similar characteristics talking to customers and but the day-to-day was very different. So can you talk a little bit about how your various product management roles differ throughout your career? And hopefully this helps address Hareem's question from University of Illinois. Don't worry, I remember that you asked the question. He asked about the progression of your career, but how did your PM roles differ? And were there very, very different responsibilities that you had in some versus others, depending on the company?
Yeah, that's a good question. So PM role varies a lot because it's not like unlike engineering role where basically your responsibilities. PM role is more like you're working with these cross-functional teams. In some companies, you might have some cross-functional teams like user research. Not every company can have, maybe some companies don't have it. So it depends a lot on the setup in a company, and also whether it's a direct-to-consumer kind of product, a B2B product. When I say B2B, it's like business to business. The functionality, the way a product is sold is very different. So whole product life cycle is very different. The way you get the requirements is very different. If it's directly to consumer or a B2C product, how you are interacting with your customers is very different. And that influences your roadmap decisions and how you do roadmap show. I'm assuming that people know their roadmap, but maybe I can explain it for the benefit of everyone. So roadmap is something where you need to convey your plan, right? Like, as I was saying, that there are 100 things that you need to do, or so you basically prioritize them. So a roadmap is typically, you have the vision that, hey, if I want to go from say California to Seattle, I know my source and my destination, but I'm not gonna reach there in one go. I may have to take multiple days to reach there, and maybe years in product management. So the way we do is like we have our end vision and goal. Sometimes that can also change if you realize that, you know, it doesn't make sense to go there. The weather is bad there and maybe we should take a turn and go somewhere else. So you totally pivot your product roadmap, but you need to have something in the mind before you start a company, before you start a product. So then you have various things that you need to do. Maybe first, you have to like have your car ready, have your stuff ready. So you build an MVP, minimum viable product, and you keep on adding features in your product backlog. And then whenever you have like in agile environment, engineering resources available, you decide that out of these different things, what customers are really asking for, this makes most sense to do. It will solve most of the customers' problem and it aligns with business mission and goal. So that's how all of this is captured in a product roadmap. I have given like a very short version of it, but just wanted to share something. So coming back to the question that how the role varies. So enterprise product management is very different from consumer product management. Then there is growth role, where if your product is having a product market fit, you want a lot of users. Then typically a growth product manager is somebody who is expert that how can we have more customers. Then there is a technical product manager role, where the product manager, not all the companies have it. It depends. If a company has a bigger setup, like Facebook has TPM role, they call it, where they have somebody who works with product manager and engineering manager. So then the product manager role becomes more outward focused, dealing with the marketing and all the cross-functional teams, and TPM handles more technical issues. But in startups like my company, it's both technical as well as outward focusing, because it's a smaller team. So there are many different roles depending on the organization's need. There can be another customer success role, where say in a B2B environment or a B2B2C environment, some of your customers are maybe in emerging markets and you are based out of Silicon Valley. You want a dedicated person there to help these customers. So you can create that role. So it depends on the need of the company. Actually, I have a writer for this. I write for Almanac, Ask Almanac, and I've written all these different roles. So if someone has interest, they can read there more in detail, that what is a growth PM, how does enterprise PM is different from a consumer PM's role.
That's a great resource. Where can people find it again? Can you repeat the URL? I'll type it into the chat.
Yeah, it's it's a longer URL, but it's Ask Almanac. That's a wiki kind of organization. They are specifically working on, you know, having technical content. It's a technical repository, and there if you search different product roles, and it's written by the writer's name is my name, Surbhi Gupta, so you can search it.
Okay, sounds great. I'll confirm.
Maybe I'll send you the URL later. I don't have it right away. Yeah.
That's totally fine. So, and I'll actually try to look it up while you're answering the next question. So we actually have a lot of very interesting questions that are coming into the thread. So I'd like to transition to those, and I'll try to ask a few at once. Folks, I'm gonna try to address all of them. If you don't get them answered, we're sorry, but feel free to always email us, and also Surbhi will be happy to help out as well, and maybe communicate through us. So here is an interesting question that I'm seeing come in from Purvi. Do you have to have a technical background to become a product manager? How about someone that has had experience as a marketer, non-technical role in B2B SaaS? Is that helpful? And I mean, from my experience, the answer is no. I want to hear your experience. And then there's another question I'll add into this because it's kind of the flip side of it. Somebody else asked why you decided to leave engineering and you didn't want to be technical, like that technical anymore.
That's first question. Otherwise, it's just too much.
I'll ask it again. So the first question is, do you need to have a technical background to become a PM?
Great question. So no, my answer is you don't need to have a technical background. As I was saying, in an organization, there are different product roles. It depends on the company you are targeting. Say if you are targeting for a role in AWS or Google Cloud and you're specifically on the cloud infrastructure, then you need a technical background, and that too in that particular domain. But if you are in a, say, consumer app, like you are a PM for Facebook app, you don't need a technical background. These companies have TPMs to work. Similarly, in a startup environment, there can be some technical PMs, there can be some non-technical PMs as well. So it totally depends on the industry. In my industry, it helped me to transition because I had technical background and I targeted the same kind of product role. So generally I mentor at other places. I advise people if they ask me, how do I do transition? I typically say that if you have an expertise in a particular field, like say you are a lawyer and if you have legal background and somebody is building a legal product, then they will really value your legal expertise. You know exactly what is required. You don't need to have a technical engineering background, but you bring this experience which nobody else has, and then your company can hire another PM who might be better in other, like in the apps development area. Similarly, if you are like, I would say, like take any example, like you're a designer and your product is very design focused. Maybe it's like in a company like Adobe, they really like designers because the products are so much geared towards user experience. So a person with design background can be a great asset. It doesn't mean that every product manager has to come from that background. It's a mix for a company. And companies generally like to have different kind of product managers because it just creates a better product.
That's a very good point. Specific expertise in an industry where you have more insight than whoever is developing that product can always be helpful. I totally agree with that. I think also for anyone that doesn't necessarily have technical experience, any experience that you can prove that you can point to that shows that you have an ability to work with technical teams, or you have worked with technical teams before and you know how to communicate with them, or you intimately understand how to get insights from customers. Maybe if you've launched a product or a startup of your own, you've done a bunch of customer interviews to try to determine what they need, and you're able to take those insights to then hire a team to build something somewhere, right? Even if it was a personal project, you can use that to leverage as an experience on your resume to leverage into a job. But some folks are also wondering, okay, like what other types of experience might be relevant? Is project management relevant? Is a Scrum Master certification something that's going to help me get a job? What other ways can you get experience that can help you get a job in PM?
Typically, it depends what kind of company you're targeting. Specifically in Silicon Valley, nobody is asking for PMP or project management experience for a product manager role. But experience helps. You can be a better group product manager if you've managed people before. You can actually rise in your career that way, but nobody specifically asks for this experience. Most of the companies are becoming very agile. All these formal processes of project management, at least I have not seen right now. But then there are some traditional companies where they might require that kind of experience. So I would say to folks, you know what? Don't worry what a company is asking for. Try to find the job, like a personalized job for yourself. What are you good at? And then try to find a job based on that. And the way you can do, for example, if you have a background in a particular field, try to find if you're changing. So, okay, I have two kinds of advice. If you are, say, really good technically, I'm just giving a technical example, that you are really good in developer tools like DevOps, then try to find a product job if you're trying to find in a DevOps environment, because your skills will be really valued. And then if your ultimate goal is to have product management in a consumer domain, you can make a shift. So it's always easy to do a shift in the same domain, and then within product management, you can, after you've worked for many years, you have learned product skills, then you can move to any product. But if you're trying to jump directly from, say, DevOps, and you want to become a marketing focused product manager, that's a very hard step. But again, having said that, it's not impossible. Many people do that, and some companies like Google, Facebook, they don't care about your background. All they care about is like, how do you do an interview, and which is focused on product sense and execution. But that is developed if you actually, like, product sense is not something easy that just comes to you. It comes after all this years of experience. So that is something I would like to share, that you don't really aim for making so many different moves, but try to find the closest product role that aligns with your background. I have seen people in music industry, they are product managers, and one of my friends is in Google. The way she did that, she was really good in music. Then she started a startup with some other friends, primarily focused on music industry. Their company got acquired. So sometimes you get a break like that. I have heard people from so many different backgrounds, they try to just get they get the skill in their domain that is really valuable to other companies, because people really want to solve customers' problem. And if somebody brings that domain knowledge, that is very valuable for a product role.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that actually, Surbhi, because that is a big contributor to having a positive outcome. You know, if you're trying to make a big leap, it's obviously going to be a lot harder. Not to say that it's impossible, but it will be a lot harder. And actually, the same thing happened to me. I may have mentioned in this previous classes, but Serg and I had a sales software company when we were in our 20s, and we were working with two technical people, but there were no product managers. We were the co-CEOs. I was basically managing the whole product, but I had to hire the engineer. I had to create a product roadmap. I had to basically prioritize all the features for him, write the user stories to help him understand exactly what he needed to build, get the customer feedback in order to understand how to prioritize those features, which is exactly what a product manager does. And even though I was never a formal product manager before that, after we were done with that company, I got a lot of interviews for product management roles, simply because I already managed a product. So there was a question that Jacqueline asked, which is what kind of classes you can take. I mean, of course, there's a lot of resources out there that can help you develop the skill. I'm biased about School16 because we prioritize experiential learning to actually help you get those skills. But one of the best ways to do it is to figure out how you can actually start working on product now. So for me, that meant, and it's similar to actually the advice that Daisy gave last week, and similar to the advice that Surbhi gave now, which is try to get experience in any way that you can. If it's building your own product, that's what you have to do. If it's joining a friend's company or finding an early stage startup where you can at least take on some of the responsibilities, your title might not be product manager, but you can take on the responsibilities. That's tangible experience that you can put directly on your resume, even if it's only a few months of work that you did, by the way. You don't have to have years of that experience. A lot of companies will still value it. One question that I wanted to make sure to address is actually somebody that asked at the very beginning, which is Ray. And he said, you know, with some of these roles, are you doing all this work yourself, all this customer research, you know, collecting data? Like how much of it is the weight on you, and how much is it being able to use other internal resources within the organization?
Okay, good question. So as I was saying earlier, it totally depends on the size of your organization. Larger companies have a lot of other people to help you, but if you are a small startup where you are just starting up, you may not even hire so many people because there's no point. You may not even able to afford it, and you yourself want to understand your first few customers, right? Then only you can bring in other people, because how would you even hire people because you are trying to explore the market on your own. So you become the user researcher, you do all that processing. But as you grow, then you have other people, especially like mature products have all these different teams. So to answer your question, it totally depends on the size of the company and where in the product life cycle your product is. But a product manager should not be afraid of getting his or her hands dirty, as they always say, whether it's being on the technical level or on the user research or the design. So basically I say it like, you know, you are master of none but jack of all trades. So you should be like open to go to that extent that, hey, if I need to help my designer understand that what we need to do, and even if I have to do something to you just, you know, get things done quickly or to explain it more, so you need to be ready for that.
That's a really good point. Sergey, did you have the next question?
Yeah, you know, I think Ray had an interesting question, which is, you know, he's kind of changing locations right now. A lot of people right now, we're in a new reality where all of us, if we are lucky enough to have work, are working remotely. But do you think product management is a career that can be done remotely? Do you see that as a common thing, or not really?
Right now, everybody doesn't have a choice. Nobody has a choice. So people are doing it remotely, but product management, you can start remotely, but ultimately it's a very interactive role. You have to do a lot of whiteboarding. So it typically requires to be co-located. I think, having said that, some of my teams are based in UK, like we have a dev center in UK in my current company, but still the designer is here. So I don't see product manager role totally being remote, because you just have to deal with so many other stakeholders, and having all these different tools like whiteboard is really important. If everybody is in the same room, that helps. So most of the roles that I have seen myself and my friends working and other colleagues working, it's not entirely remote, but some part of it can be remote where you have to produce like a lot of documents, you have to think through things sometimes, like you do discussion and then you have to do some synthesis on that, you have to write blogs, help your marketing team with PowerPoints, so that work can be done remotely. But when you have brainstorming sessions, at that time you need to convince your staff and everybody, and generally it's more face-to-face kind of meetings. I agree, it sounds weird because in today's hyper connected remote world, still I mean, before COVID days, I have not seen like a product management role to be entirely remote, but let's see how it evolves. But having said that, I think being co-located really helps. Just if you have a demo of an app or anything, you can, people can be in the same room, you can have lot more discussions rather than doing it remotely.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of those roles where it's so much of it is dependent on effective communication that sometimes being in the same room with people helps. That being said, Ray, there are companies that are fully remote from the beginning. Their entire team is remote. Everything they do is remote. They start off that way, and that's how they function. There are actually some websites out there that list remote jobs, and even on websites like angel.co, where you can find pretty much every startup job you can imagine. Those you can sort by, or you can filter by remote jobs as well. So they're out there, but perhaps less common for them to be remote.
So I want to address a few questions that are coming in from the audience. Jacqueline asked a clarification question. How much is project management and production is in the same neighborhood as product management? I think, Surbhi, you said earlier that it looks like, at least from what you're seeing, project management isn't necessarily a requirement. And I agree with that. I had no actual formal project management experience at all before getting that. And production in terms of photo shoots and the like, I wouldn't see that as relevant. What would be relevant is anything that touches the product or the product management process, the product ownership process. So, in some ways, sales, for example, can be pretty relevant, actually, especially sales engineering or technical sales, because you have to understand the product and you're already working with customers, which is part of a product manager's job. Engineering, same thing. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that at all, Surbhi, but there's also another question that I have, but go ahead.
So I think typically most of the people transition from engineering background, design, UX, because you're so close to a product, you really understand. And some designers ask very smart questions like, why do we really need it? How it helps? Because when we are analyzing designs, we do take into consideration the engineering effort also. Sometimes we prioritize some designs based on that. So designers get some technical aspects as well as they have a lot of experience about customers, because as a product manager, you share that with them. So some designers evolve into product managers, and data scientists I've seen very commonly, because they work very closely on what kind of data they are seeing, and they work closely with product managers. So design, business, as you said, helps, technical, sales, pre-sales, all these different roles. Actually, in different product capacities, I have seen people from all the different backgrounds. I don't think I would say that this background doesn't help. It depends on the kind of product you are working for. There is a role. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a critical takeaway, is if you have some relevant experience in some domain. So, for Jacqueline, for example, you have experience, maybe an agency or creative experience. Then if you find a product that requires that domain expertise, you have a higher chance of landing that role. Now, while some parts of your job maybe weren't directly relevant to product management, clearly some experience was. You mentioned producing a product end to end. Obviously, working on a software product is really what people are looking for, but there's a way that you can adjust your narrative in order to make it compelling for hiring manager, your background compelling to your hiring manager. In other words, you might not have direct experience, but you can adjust your narrative to make it sound like it's relevant to the person that's hiring you. And again, I would say that probably an earlier stage company is more likely to hire somebody that doesn't have direct formal product management experience. But that's a little bit of my bias, because that's exactly what happens.
I agree with you. Startups Definitely, because there is no formal process that a product manager has to have this skill set. They value anybody who can help product become a better product and product grows. So as you mentioned, angel.co, got my first role actually through that website when I was in the Valley. LinkedIn, of course, is very useful, but Angel, you can directly search what a founder is looking for. And even if you don't find a product role, you can, if some startup is doing in some space that really interests you, you can join in any role. Maybe a customer support role is not, it's not bad, because you learn so much about customers. And then because it's a startup and you perform really well and you get to wear so many different hats, you can actually tweak your role, eventually grow into some other direction if you would like to.
So I want to address two more really important questions, and let's start with this one, because and by the way, this next question we can have an hour-long conversation about. We're actually going to cover this in our classes at School16, the tuition-based program. But can you talk a little bit about the interview process for a product manager? What's that like? What's the hardest part to master?
Okay, the hardest part is there is no one consistent interview style for product manager. Like there is no one role. There's no one consistent interview style. It depends so much on the kind of company you are targeting. So like I'll give some examples. Companies like Google, they require technical knowledge as well. They have product sense rounds in your analytical skills, your estimation skills, and technical skills. Some smaller startups would just require your domain experience. They don't care about whether you can do estimation. Estimation, I see, like Google has questions like how much is the weight of Empire State Building. You actually don't use it directly, but in a way you use it as a product manager, because say I'm launching a new product, I need to do some market estimation, whether it makes sense to even launch this product and where should we start. Should we start in emerging market? Should we start a pilot launch just in Silicon Valley, depending on the kind of users we are looking for? But it totally depends on the company, the kind of skill set they are looking for. So I would say overall, a commonality is like you need to be really good in behavioral questions. Tell me a time, like Amazon kind of questions, commonly people call it like that. You need to be like able to articulate your stories. Tell me a time where you had to work with a team, or tell me a time you had to do with a failure, questions like that. And then develop your product sense, which is like, what is your favorite product and why? That's a very common question, even in companies like Google interview. So they are not looking like, oh, I need this like small things in the UX, like if you are onboarded in an app. Think from both users' perspective as well as from a product manager's perspective, at how do you make it better. So I would recommend that there's a lot of stuff online. People can read it, and it's good to read things like that. Go open your phone and see what is the app that you really visit every day. Why are you doing that? What is the benefit that it is providing? What is the hook in that app? How it's making your life easier. So some product manager has worked really hard to make it so successful. So think from that perspective and read online, because even today, if I prepare for an interview, I have no idea like where should I start, because they can ask you anything on the planet or outside as well, like design a Mars rover. I have had that question in an interview, and I was like, okay, I need to understand what it is, what is the goal. So you go through the entire process, that how can it really solve your customer's problem? Does it even make sense to do it? So having that analytical mindset, that creativity is the requirement, which doesn't, there is no easy way that you can get it. There is no one that can teach you. You have to learn every bit from whatever conversation you are having from with anyone. Yeah, and read a lot.
Can you briefly touch on the case interview part of it? Because I remember once I had an interview with Grubhub, Seamless. We all use Seamless. I did interview there. I did not get the role. And I remember part of it is because I wasn't prepared for the case interview. And the question they asked me was, you're designing the buy it now button on Amazon. And how would you go about, you're designing the buy it now button, you know, the button where you can quickly buy on Amazon. And how would you go about making product decisions for that feature? And let's just say it was very uncomfortable for about 15 minutes as I tried to wrestle through that issue. But how do you get better at those types of questions, at the case interview questions?
And by failing in some interviews. I'm just kidding. So basically I would say, don't be scared. Go for interviews, learn from your interviews, as well as like taking this example, buy now, see what is the goal, why Amazon is trying to do that. Basically, Amazon is trying to make any experience frictionless. They want you, if you want something, rather than going through 10 different steps in between, you can change your mind. Hey, do I really want it? Do I need to enter my credit card? Even if credit card is stored, like people change their mind all the time, right? Maybe I get a call, even if I don't want to change my mind, but if there are 10 steps or even 3 steps, the probability of me buying that product is less. So that's why buy now, that was the impact. But then there can be some trade-offs. Maybe people buy more if they add things to the cart. With buy now, they may not be doing that. So for an Amazon, it's not that Amazon's product manager is going to just decide based on what he or she feels or what I think, it is going to help me. They test a lot of people. They do multivariate, like multi-user testing, A/B testing, which you commonly call, and see what is actually driving the user behavior based on the goal. If they want to sell items quickly, then maybe they will have buy now. If they want to sell lot of items with one shipping fee to the people so they get the value, then maybe they'll have the cart. So depending on the goal of the product at that time, why they are building some features, they'll decide. And this is what they test in a product manager interview, that are you saying what you want, or are you thinking what customers are looking for? So you need to build all that, do some maybe research. And some companies also launch a product and then learn from user behavior. Like Facebook run a lot of experiments. I think there are hundreds of experiments running in any given, I think, during time, and their algorithms are so smart. So whatever works better, they just adjust their product to that and ignore the other feature. So does it answer your question?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I think it's like when I studied for the SATs in high school, my parents made me take a bunch of practice tests, and just doing it over and over again is how you get better. Same here. Look, Google's your friend. You can literally find out examples of case interviews. There's product managers that talk about this stuff ad nauseum online, how they went through that experience, how they handled those questions. It doesn't mean you're going to be 100% prepared. You still have to kind of go through that experience yourself, but it certainly does mean that that you're going to be more prepared. A few more things, folks. Thank you for, we're coming up on 7 o'clock Eastern, so we're going to have to wrap this up. But one great question at the end there is, do you have any reading recommendations for people, whether it's books that can help them become better at product, maybe they're startup-oriented books, or blogs, or anything that comes to mind for you?
Sure, lots and lots actually. So I did not take any classes. I was very curious. I think classes are good. Now people are lucky that there is somebody who can teach you. But when I started, there were not many classes. So what I did, I actually went to a lot of events. Even a talk like this, I'll pick something and then do research. And now there is so much content in last few years. I recommend books. There are like Cracking the PM Interview. That's a very popular book, and it explains a lot about product roles. So that's a good book. Then there are so many blogs. I read Medium every time. It helps me to just develop my product thinking. And I would still say it's a journey. There is never a destination. I'm also still learning. We all learn, and that's how we grow in life. Once we think that we know the things, then that's the full stop of your growth. So what I did, that I started one article, and then that article points me to another. That's how everything happens. And then I would give you keywords to search. Maybe you start reading about A/B testing. You read about what is more important. Retention, that's a great topic. If you just search it, you'll get so much stuff on Google that you will think that how really people think. You search on Nee Rial's article, how to make habit forming products. That will actually help you help you understand that why are you spending a lot of time on some products and not other products. Other than that, there are many books, but I think I would start with those. And then storytelling skills, anything that can help you to share your story better. That helps in showcasing your skills when you are in an interview setting.
That's great. And there's some people dropping links into the chat, so if you could check that out. I will just address one question really quick because Salman waited patiently and asked it, which is it more advantageous don't you think that mastering one skill would be more advantageous in a tech domain? My answer is it depends. Some people will prefer somebody that's more of a jack of all trades. some organizations will require that you have really deep expertise in one area. But what do you think about that? Is it more advantageous to master one particular skill?
In technical space, like you mean like in engineering or something like that?
To become a product manager, do they want you to be deep in one particular skill? So let's say, I'll throw out an example, know Java better than anybody else.
No. I don't think so. So see, if you have a technical background, you are tested more on that. If you don't have a technical background, you have an escape route. Really, trust me. I sometimes wish, like, say, if I'm trying for Google, I wish I don't have technical background, because then I have to really go at the depth, because I want to prove that I'm really good at technical. But if you don't have technical background, don't spend your time learning Java. All you need to learn is common jargons, that if you work with this very smart engineer, can you communicate? That's what they're looking for. So take a simple course where you understand that how systems really work, like a system design class. And there are a lot of YouTube videos. I think Gaurav Sain is someone who is very popular. So all you need to understand that how Netflix works, how Google search query works. Say if you type google.com, that's a very popular interview question. You just need to understand that how this whole, like, you have different types of databases. There are SQL based, NoSQL, then in memory. Then there are like how you actually interact, pull that data, present to the customer, how web applications work, how native applications work, what is the difference between a hybrid app versus native app. Just have an overview, so that if somebody talks in a meeting that, you know what, we should have more real estate space if we do something on the app, and you're like Googling, hey, what does this mean? Then you are bound to fail. But you need to just get acquainted so that you can understand the technical discussions. That's what they're looking for. In an interview, nobody is going to test you on your Java skills. Just having normal knowledge of algorithms is a plus point, but not every company is looking for. But you need to understand how computers generally work, how systems work. Yeah.
I remember once at an interview for a product role at a video software company, a video advertising software company, the CEO asked me, do you know what a JavaScript VPage is? And I had no experience. Now I know what it is, but back then I had no experience. I said, look, Tom, I don't know what it is, but I can guarantee that I will learn quicker than anybody.
That is not the job you're looking for also, right? It depends. As I said, you have to get into a job where you will enjoy working. If somebody is looking at somebody, maybe if it's a product management role where you are dealing with, efficient, as I was saying, on the back end side, then you need to be super technical, but that's not then your target job. You need to find something where you are good at. So yeah. I would say it's good if you didn't get that job, because you wouldn't be happy. You will be miserable every day.
And I actually did get that job because for the same reason that you just said, that CEO valued my ability to learn more than my ability to have a random piece of knowledge. And he recognized that from my answer. So that's one piece of takeaway. And then also, Salman, just to really quickly say, it doesn't mean if you have a deep expertise in something, it doesn't mean you're disqualified from opportunities, by no means. But it also means we're also trying to say it's not necessarily a requirement. Okay, everybody, I think these have been some fantastic questions. A few quick announcements, but first of all, I just want to say thank you so much, Surbhi, for giving your wisdom to the group. I think this has been incredibly valuable. Even I learned a lot in this, and I have experience in product management. So certainly the people here, if you've never been a product or never interacted with a product manager, this has been very, very valuable information. If you want access to this recording and the notes from the class, the recording might come first and the notes second, but if you want access to this recording, please do go to the link that I just dropped into the chat, school16.co/survey, and fill out the survey. It's going to take literally 2 minutes. The feedback is really valuable for us, and we're going to share it with Surbhi as well. And then once again, if you are interested in a more hands-on program at School16, head to school16.co/program. It will expose people to different roles like product, operations, marketing, and sales. But even if you want to be in product, as we just discussed with Surbhi for the last hour, it is a highly cross-functional role. If you don't know or understand intimately how other roles within the organizations work, if you don't know how to interact with people within other roles, that is exposure and experience that you need to get. I had experience in sales and operations, I would say, and finance as well before I got my first product role. So having the ability to work cross-functionally, knowing how the different roles function are helpful. So if you're interested in the program, school16.co/program. Surbhi, thank you so much once again. Everybody, thank you so much for contributing your questions. They have been really helpful. And again, please fill out the survey and we will send you.
Happy to help. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Thanks, folks, for jumping in, especially everybody that's calling in from all over the world, staying up late or waking up early. We appreciate you joining these sessions, and we're excited to announce our next one, which is going to be next Wednesday again at 6 p.m. Eastern.
And you will get an email to RSVP for that one as well. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye-bye.